When I received this Matchbox Planet Scout casting in a box of junk castings, I couldn't help but see an old Gerry Anderson UFO show shadow vehicle. There's just something about it. And those were on tracks and those were shaped differently. And yeah, they were different, but I still couldn't help but see it in this thing. And to be honest, these colors on this, they're putrid. They scream psychedelic. So that had to change. So I decided I wanted to do a tribute build to Gerry Anderson's show. And so this isn't a reproduction of the shadow vehicle, but it's a tribute build. In other words, I'm taking what I got and trying to capture some of the aspects of those vehicles in this build. This thing had a ton of posts under it. You know, it has three posts that hold the top part of the body, the top metal part of the body to the metal base. And then it uses one of those posts, but then it uses an entirely separate post for the front end of that black plastic strap that holds the wheels in place. And then that even had two other tiny little posts that were, held the center of that black plastic in place. And those I wasn't going to, I cleared them off so I could pull that off, but I wasn't going to tap and screw those center two. So there you have it apart. You see the putrid yellow, orangish glass. This casting is in rough shape, but I'm making a lot of changes to it. The center was chrome, as you see here. Threw that in super clean, and to say that chrome came off quickly is an understatement. Sometimes there's chrome that fights you. This chrome fell off this thing. It's like I put it in, I walked out of the room, I came back a little while later, and I mean like a few minutes later, and it was gone. So, that I end up rinsing off after I took it out of the super clean. But here we are back at the casting, the main two metal parts of the casting. Do the usual drill and tap. It was a little awkward to mess with here. I was having a hard time holding it for some reason. I just got one of Eddie at Simple Customs clamps that I won through Fat Guy Productions Christmas giveaway. So I'm going to be trying that here sometime in the not too distant future to see how that works out to hold some of these things for drilling. I'm looking forward to trying that. There's the three main posts that hold the top to the base, the two in the side and the one in the front. I put extra long screws in it there just to hold it for painting. And then it was time to clean up the casting. It didn't look like it was in very good shape, but all in all, the casting isn't in terrible shape. It doesn't fit together particularly great, but it's not terrible either. And I think it's just natural for the casting. Yes, it's time for JB Weld. What I'm doing here, I'm filling in those two lights that stuck out through the roof. That back chrome center plastic stuck out through the roof as well. And I'm filling in those and the back side windows. Because again, I'm recreating a shadow vehicle which had solid sides. And as you'll see here coming up shortly, I was really happy with how this turned out. And it works out really well doing the tape on the outside and filling it in from the inside. You get a very smooth result. But upon looking at the results, I needed to make a change. So I do this, let it set up and cure. I did leave the very back window open, and as you probably saw earlier, it had like a simulated louver to it. I end up keeping that chunk of the glass, even though I don't keep it glass. But there I was just kind of finessing in the JB Weld, trying not to have too much excess on the inside. There we're looking at the outside after it cured, and you see those side areas right there. I didn't like that they were still indented. So I ended up mixing up another batch of JB Weld, filling it in from the outside this time, and the tape there is just to protect the other areas. Then I went over that and the earlier JB welded areas with Bondo spot putty. And so I'm kind of reconfiguring that back section to be smooth off the sides, to be a full, straight, smooth side, as opposed to having that indentation right behind the cab where it then dropped in and the back windows were. I'm smoothing that all out, in effect making it more like a van than just like a wagon, for lack of a better way of explaining that. Not that it was a wagon, and not that vans don't have back windows, but I hope you get the idea of what I'm saying. So you'll see here in a second. I took a little chunk of wood. I have this little chunk of wood. It's part of a paint stir stick, for like house paint. And I have this chunk that comes in handy. Like here, I wrapped sandpaper around it so I'd have a sanding block. I drill on top of this thing. I mean, it's just a little chunk of wood that comes in crazy handy to have around. So I sand the heck out of that and get it smooth. Then I start doing other things. And there's the louvers in the back window that I mentioned before. I'm keeping that section. So I cut it off from the rest of that glass section. And what I end up doing is, I like the look of that, even though I'm going to have it be completely metal, appear to be completely metal part of the body in the end. But I just stick it in the back and CA glue it in place. And so that will be primered and painted like all the rest of this. But rather than filling in that back section with JB Weld and having a smooth back panel, I liked having that detail. Just that added little, oomph to the back of the car. It's detail that I like seeing there. And it's all those little details that kind of make these builds. So there you see it after it's CA glued in place. And you can kind of see how I sanded the other areas. I had this radar type dish for the top of this thing. This was from a box of 3D printed parts that Time Rider sent me to give away in the builds. I kept that for myself. I had a feeling I was going to use it. I didn't want to have to try and print another one. I have some dishes that I printed and actually gave away. But for some reason, this one I had a feeling would fit into this build better. Oh, and also, I put some rhinestones on there. You might want to back up and take another look. I put some rhinestones for detail on the top in a couple spots. And those I'm going to paint over as well. But you'll see that. I did have to trim some of that interior that stuck up through that hole in the back so that that interior section would fit properly. And then I'm making another cut here to that glass. Again, it needed to be trimmed up because of the JB Weld work. That added section wasn't needed. And I was thinking I was going to do another change to that glass, and that's coming up. But I wanted that glass to be able to fit in the front. I created custom decals for this, obviously. And since I was doing that, I thought, well, let me make some headlight decals. So the side decals for the vehicle, if you had seen, UFO or UFO, as they would say in the show, they were white toner decals that I needed to make. And so I thought, well, let me do headlights. I'll lay down the white for the headlights first. And then I did a silver decal to go over it. Nothing fancy, but did that. There you see after I've painted the vehicle. And again, that's just with the Tester's Model Master Gray. It was a flat paint. I went over that with a clear so I could do the decals. And then once this is all finished, I end up going over it. There you see one of the silver headlights, and I'm about to put the second silver headlight in place. I did go over this Once this was all done, once I had all the, painted little details here and there, I put some little red indicator lights on the top on those rhinestones that I had added. I also painted the interior with some details, as you see here. But the outside, I didn't want it shiny gloss, and I didn't want it flat. So with those two not being where I was going, I did go over it with a semi-gloss clear, which I'm not sure why. I always fight with semi-gloss clear. It's like I'm never 100% happy with the results. I think in my mind, in some cases I want it more flat, in some cases I want it more glossy, and it's somewhere in between. So here I am putting the base, using that plastic strap to hold the wheels in place. I kept the original wheels, I just cleaned them up, redetailed the outside of the wheels, not with chrome, but with a gray to kind of match the vehicle. And so I was happy with the results on cleaning those up. And then I used a vacuum form machine to create a new clear windshield. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to turn out. I was hoping it would work, and it ended up working out well, as you'll see here. But fortunately, it's not that complex of a shape either. So it's a good fit, and it worked out well around what I had done, and I liked being able to see the detail on the inside. And so at this point, it's just a matter of throwing it together with the numerous little posts that need to be fastened down. Obviously, there's not a lot of color on this thing. That's why I threw the red dots, the red lights up on it, or indicators, or whatever you want to call them, to give it some color. I didn't want to do a different color for the dish. I tried to keep this a very monochromatic look. And those of you who recall the show can hopefully see the resemblance here. Obviously, it's not on tracks, so it's not a true shadow vehicle. But the fact that it's not on tracks affected some of the things I did, and I didn't want to switch this over to tracks. That seemed just crazy because I like the looks of the casting. It's not that I don't like it. I just thought it was putrid the way it looked before. And I thought it would make a nice little tribute video or a tribute build. So it could be a shadow vehicle. You could see it being one of those, even though it's not a dead-on recreation of one of those original vehicles. So there you see what we originally started with. And again, you see those back windows, how they were set in a little ways. That's what I needed to eliminate. I wanted to keep the taper towards the back, but I didn't want to have the indentation. And I think I accomplished that with the JB Weld. I liked keeping the back louvers, even though I don't paint them as if they're louvers. They're just a way of having the panel appear. So here you see the end result. And there's things I did, like the white stripe coming down the side. That really follows the shadow vehicles, the shadow control vehicle specifically, with that wording I put on this. The line that comes down, the reason I stopped it at the middle of the panel rather than taking it all the way down the side was because the original shadow vehicles, it ended in roughly that same spot because they had tracks on the side. And so I stopped the decal there, and I did actually have decal that I could take down that side, and I decided against it because I kind of wanted to remain true to those original vehicles. I thought if I extended it all the way down, it wouldn't be as similar. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy this build. If you haven't checked out Gerry Andersons UFO, check it out online. There's a lot of it on YouTube. So thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and healthy out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.